All right, well, the cost of living is continuing to rise. We know it's expensive at the moment, and there have been increases, but all to do with the weather this time round. The price of tomatoes, spinach and peppers have gone up. We'll find out how much in a moment. So let's speak to the Agricultural Information Group. It's Agrimark Trends, who's going to tell us just where we are in all of this. So all the way from Potchefstroom now, it's the MD, Johnny van der Merwe. Johnny, good morning to you. It's a pleasure having you with us here on eNCA. When we talk about the prices having gone up, we're going to talk about the increased cost in a moment. What has caused this increase?
Yes, thank you for having me. Very glad to share some thoughts with you this morning. As you mentioned, I think the weather-related issues, frost across the northern production areas, Limpopo, was the big factor that impacted prices on fresh produce markets. And we saw your more perishable products, specifically tomatoes, peppers, and spinach, that increased 2 weeks, relatively 2 weeks ago. The new statistics just came out, and we saw most of those prices coming back again and decreasing again on the market, with specifically tomatoes that increased again, with volumes increasing again. So we're in the middle part of the month. We must also take that into account. So demand is not that high at the moment, but yeah, definitely the frost had an impact on your perishable products, and we're expecting the impact of this frost to have a lag effect on your less perishable products, such as potatoes, for instance. We know there was some damage to some crops, some production areas, and we're expecting, and we saw actually last week that those volumes started to decrease, and we're expecting potato prices that's already on a very high level to gain some momentum as well due to this factor.
All right, so we're hearing that there's going to be an increase of some kind. Are you able to tell me, is there an estimated cost increase for the vegetables you've mentioned, tomatoes, spinach and peppers? Now you've mentioned potatoes as well. Can you give me a figure, unless I missed you saying it earlier, James? Johnny, my apologies. Is there a number you can give me?
Yes, so we saw about I think just above 20% increase in prices, in tomato prices specifically 2 weeks ago. Last week we saw that actually came back by the same amount approximately. So tomato prices stabilized. But it must also be mentioned, tomato prices are very sensitive to any market, especially weather-related news. So you really see an up and down movement, and the market reacting very quickly to certain volume changes. Potatoes, tomatoes, onions, carrots, your more staple foods, if I can call it that, in the fresh produce market, it's got a very constant demand factor. So with any fluctuations in volumes or delivered to the markets, we usually see a immediate reaction on the prices because the demand factor is so stable.
Forgive me, I'm not involved in the agricultural world, Johnny, so just forgive the ignorant question, but I think it's pertinent I ask this. You mentioned potatoes, which we know is considered a staple food, tomatoes to a certain extent as well, spinach as well. What about things like maize, corn, particularly for flour, for the cost of bread, etc., or is that got nothing to do with the frost that we've seen? That kind of agriculture doesn't get affected by frost?
No, that's a whole nother story on its own. The livestock industry is a whole nother story on its own. Looking specifically into maize, we saw the last year, or the last production season approximately, we just finished with our harvests locally, but we're moving into the next production season. The planning for the next production season usually starts now, specifically for maize. So we see towards September the producers start planting from the east to the west towards December. But factors impacting on those prices are international related. We saw we're actually on export parity prices, so we had a good harvest locally, so we have enough to export as well, specifically for maize. So we now depend on international prices to determine our local price fluctuations as well. So weather-related issues actually in America, demand factors to China and the trade between America, China, and we saw weather-related issues in South America as well that impacted on these prices, and maize prices in general to stay on a very high level, or relatively high level compared to previous seasons. We just last week we got new news from America that they adjusted their yield potential as well, and that resulted in prices to go up again. So the last week or so we actually saw your maize prices, soybean prices, wheat prices going up with international demand. I think that is the main theme of the story, is that demand locally, demand internationally for staple foods, for commodities is staying on a higher level and creating a buffer or supporting level for most commodity prices.
All right, that's some good news. It's the frost not affecting the maize and flour in the country. For the moment, Johnny van der Merwe, MD of Agrimark Trends, joining us here on eNCA. So not good news, the frost affecting prices of tomatoes, spinach and peppers. That frost in Limpopo causing a slight increase in the costs for that.